Hi everyone, this is The Lens UK. I'm Mitko.
I'm Michael.
And today we have a special guest. Now this is Dr. Christian Stadler, right? Is it spelled Stadler?
Yeah, Stadler, yeah.
Dr. Stadler is an associate lecturer at Warwick Business School, and before he was at Bath University and Tuck School of Management. Now, Dr. Stadler is an expert on long-term business and sustainability. Dr. Stadler, would you like to tell us a bit more about what is it that you research on?
Yeah, so one of the areas, as you pointed out correctly, is I look at how companies can succeed in the very, very long term. I looked at corporations that are 100 years and older and tried to figure out how they manage to do that. It's quite rare, yeah. The average company today is just about 12.5 years old, so 100 years is considerably more, and I find it an extremely exciting question, how some of them can stay around for so long and do well.
Okay. Michael, would you like to introduce the topic?
Yes, so since we have an expert on enduring success, we'd like to combine it with our field of interest, which is consumer technology. And I think it's actually a really, really interesting match, because consumer electronics is not really known for enduring companies, if you see it this way. The industry is like characterized by really, really fast product life cycles. They get shorter and shorter in a way. So what we'd like to talk about today is the big names in the industry right now, which are per se Facebook, Google and Apple. And your point of view, how do you see the chances of these companies to become enduring companies in your terms? And I think I'd like to start with Facebook. Facebook has recently been undergoing their IPO. They have become a publicly traded organization and therefore have obviously more than before external pressure. And considering this pressure and their current business model, what are your ideas or your opinion on Facebook as an enduring company?
So in a way you start off with the one which is really the trickiest one, out of these three, I have clearly the greatest doubts about Facebook. They have a fairly narrow business model as it stands. One of the things I did see for companies succeeding for such a long time is they didn't have all eggs in one basket, which Facebook clearly does have at this point of view. Everything is around their social networking site, and we don't quite yet know how you can make really money with that. For a while it looked better, then very shortly after the IPO actually lost a few big customers. So bottom line, really, I still don't know whether they're going to succeed in the long run.
So what do you think that they should do in order to be able to endure in not even like 100 years, but even to reach the cycle of 12-15 years?
Yeah. I mean, most immediately they need to figure out how they can make more money through advertising. It's very tricky because you have this trade-off between privacy and making revenues from your advertisers that is much more sensitive than it is for Google, where you just place it on when somebody searches for a term, you place an advertisement. That's not quite so invading. Then if things come up that clearly geared towards the stuff that you've just been talking about with your friends, so that's much more tricky. And well, I don't have the answer, otherwise I guess these guys would hire me, but they need to figure out somehow how to make money from advertising. I think that's the first important step.
I mean, I've been reading up on Google last week, and their user base in terms of mobile use of Facebook has been increasing a lot more in proportion to the user base on the desktop computers. But the fact is that they still don't make any revenue from mobile advertising.
Yeah, most of their money actually comes for Google, still from search, the traditional business.
I mean, in terms of Facebook now.
Oh, you're talking about Facebook? Yeah, Facebook doesn't really make a lot of money, basically. I think that's still the bottom line. They have, what is it, 900 million people who are on Facebook now?
Something like that.
Yeah, about a billion now.
Yeah, almost a billion now, yeah. So they have a huge user base, but they haven't figured out how to make money from that. And as long as that's not the case, they're going to struggle.
Okay.
But wouldn't you argue that the superior information base that Facebook arguably has would make for a pretty solid foundation to extend the business in a way? I can see Facebook trying to become the new Nielsen in a way it is, because they have a huge spectrum of like age groups and demographics they cover, and it would make for really, really fast and efficient market research in a way. They have what they introduced and what has been like really well received was the like button.
Yeah.
And I think the like button is like a tool that would immediately give feedback on some kind of issues. So firms would be encouraged to ask questions via Facebook. So they could become a platform for market research in a way. Do you see this as a basis for becoming a more enduring company in a way?
Sure, you know, that's exactly the sort of direction it can take, but it doesn't take away again this dilemma about when I use and mine that sort of data, I go very deep into the private lives of people, and you're going to get a pushback about that, which from a legal perspective can be troublesome, but purely from, you know, your customers might hate that, and it might push them over the edge and they switch over to, say, Google Plus or so, yeah, where they might not feel that they're under that same pressure of releasing personal data. I'm not sure, you guys are a bit younger than me, so you already might be less concerned than I am about this. Certainly when I talk now about people who are a few years older than me, they are very, very highly concerned about that. They don't want to know anybody, don't want to have anybody else out there knowing how they think, what they do, and they find it, you know, straightforwardly scary if there's a company who comes up always with the sort of advertisement that fits exactly the sort of stuff that they have been talking about. And that's this very difficult tension, yeah? They somehow need to find a loophole. Maybe, you know, generational changes with less concern of younger people will actually deal with the problem for them. You know, maybe in 10 years' time they won't mind anymore because they're all happy to share that sort of stuff.
But saying this, would you argue that it was bad timing for Facebook to become a publicly traded organization?
They had no choice, yeah, to become a publicly traded company. According to US law, you have to release a fast amount of data after you have a certain number of shareholders, and they were going beyond that threshold internally. So you know, rather releasing that information without having the benefit of getting extra funds, they decided to go public to cash in as well. So it's not really a question whether this was the right thing to do or not. I think they had no choice.
But regarding the IPO, becoming a publicly traded company, would you reckon it's a good thing that they did, because now they will have more pressures from the shareholders as well as from being more transparent to actually diversify, innovate, and find more sources of income and revenue?
In terms of long-term success, shareholder pressure is not necessarily the best thing. Okay. When we look at long-term performance of corporations that are publicly traded and those which are family-owned, we see that actually those which are family-owned perform better than those which are publicly traded. And that has to do with the time horizon. As a shareholder, I want good results every quarter. If I'm the family who owns that company, might say it's fine, you know, we have 3-4 years where things don't go so well, but some things really take a while to develop. Therefore, yeah, for achieving long-term success, shareholder pressure is not particularly helpful, really.
Okay. Okay. If I remember correctly, you were a former consultant.
Yeah, for a short while. Yeah.
Considering your past, what would you say? Should Facebook maybe hire a consultant to figure out?
I'm sure they hired tons of them already.
Maybe they already did. Like, considering you were a consultant, what would you recommend Facebook to do at the moment?
To do right now, I mean, I can only go back, you know, to what I said earlier. Figure out how you can make money through advertising, and along your line of thinking, you know, how can you use the information without pushing people too strong in the corner and making them feel too uncomfortable about the data they release. And if they want to know more, they need to actually hire consultants, to figure that out.
So you can see Facebook going down the way of becoming the next internet advertising company as well.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a possible idea, and if they want to succeed then in the longer run, they need to think about how they can broaden their business beyond that sort of core product. But as long as they haven't even figured out how to make money from that core product, there's no point in now moving into other spheres.
Do you think it's possible to become a sustainable company, an enduring company, with just one core product?
No, not really. The problem is when you are entirely focused on one core product, this product will go out of fashion, world moves on, and eventually you will not be able to make money from that one core product anymore. So what we really observed with companies that were successful over long term is they had several different business streams, and there might have been some trouble in one of them, but then they were able to make money from another one. Important though, you know, they were related businesses. It was not that they produced, I don't know, cars and gummy boots at the same time. That's you know, too far apart really to leverage any of the resources across these. But having related businesses in various areas makes a lot of sense. Siemens, which you know, maybe closest to the companies I've in terms of the companies I looked at to what you guys are interested in, it's a company that is really quite broadly based. Yeah? They involved in developing technology for nuclear power plants as much as they develop hearing aids, yeah, or they develop technology for phones. So they are quite broadly based, but there's still a relationship between all these different businesses because they're all centered around electrical engineering.
But then having said that, since you said before that the Facebook business model is not so well designed yet and everything, would you say that before they should diversify, they should really exploit their own field of their own core product, which is basically the social networking advertising?
Yes.
Okay. Should we move on to the next company?
Yes, I think we call it today for Facebook now, and we're going to move on to...
They're done and finished.
They're going to be finished. And we're going to move on to Google and Apple.
Yeah.
And I'd like to hear your views on these two companies in a more contrasted way. So having said Facebook is a separate entity, we want to see Google and Apple as two kind of like different companies.
Okay. You need to explain to me in which way they're different actually.
Okay.
I think the main difference is that obviously everyone is aware of that Apple bases a lot of their revenue on their physical products as well, and building the ecosystem around the physical products. Whereas Google, although they are present on a lot of phones now with Android, they still base their core product and the search and the software solutions, which are then given for free for manufacturers.
Okay.
So there are quite a few more differences between Apple and Google. Like Mitka said, Apple is more into closed innovation. Their products are really tied into one entity. They have hardware, software and services. They all do it themselves. They are more into closed innovation in a way, that they rarely go the open source way, so make their software openly available to other OEMs, so they have it literally bound at their company. And also in terms of management style, because Apple is well known for only hiring the best people, having a really, really hierarchical structure, really, really top down, whereas Google is encouraging even the lowest employees to start their own projects.
You know about the 80-20 rule they have.
Yeah. And one interesting actually, one thing you point out is this closed system for innovation that Apple has. I'm not entirely sure if it's fully true. Yes, they're more closed than Google, yeah, but they've also opened up compared to what they've done further back in the past. I think they had an experience with the Macintosh where in the beginning they tried to do everything themselves. That didn't go well, and they really only managed to survive because eventually they opened themselves to Windows as well. And they've learned from that, which is in fact also one of the aspects that we observe with long-term successfully corporations, that they are prepared to learn from their mistake, and Apple has done that. Sure, yeah, they're more closed than Google, but one of the things that makes the iPhone so successful is the apps, yeah, which you have on them, and that is something that is done primarily by outside developers, which are allowed into that system and work within that system. So there is some sharing and opening up also in the overall Apple system going on, which was crucial, I think, to their success.
I agree on that point. I'd like to point out, though, however, that the App Store is one of the most rigid ecosystems of any of the companies. They have very, very harsh guidelines. They often reject apps without explaining within the first 1-2 months.
Yeah.
So it might be a really frustrating experience to produce for them.
Sure.
And on the other side, one of the biggest problems Google is facing with Android right now is that all the OEMs are using the software but like skinning it, like making it look different. And by that they don't have the compatibility with the newest Google ecosystem. So I think I agree that Apple opened up and it was necessary for them, but I still feel that they have a much more closed approach than other companies in the industry. And what you can see nowadays is that Google and Microsoft makes moves towards the Apple approach of being more closed down. I mean, Microsoft offers the Windows Phone 8 system to OEMs, but they are not allowed to skin it in a way or like make it look different. So they have always the best compatibility. And Google started to work with very few manufacturers on a specific Google lineup of products or bringing their own products right now. So would you say that is Google, Microsoft and other companies acknowledging that they are wrong and that the Apple way is the right way right now and it's more of a sustainable approach?
So there's a bit of a trade-off here, I guess, in going towards the maximum of potential innovation or making systems more aligned, more straightforward, more easy to exploit these technologies in a way. And I do see an advantage in having a system where you can get strong on the exploitation side. In other words, yes, I agree that I think Apple got that right, and this emphasis they have on exploitation is the right one. In general, people when they talk innovation, they often talk about Apple. It's not quite right, I think. Apple is a company that uses lots of technology that's been around and puts fantastic design around it, makes it very user-friendly, integrates the different systems, and creates something that is really cool and slick, nice, easy to use. So it's not so much about them being great innovators, it's about packaging it, about making the most out of stuff that is around already, and that is in fact a sign of long-term success as well, that we found in companies back to the 19th century, that it's not necessarily being the first, the greatest innovators, but making the most out of those things that you have already is extremely crucial.
Okay. I totally agree on that. I myself think Apple is not really an innovator in terms of bringing out the newest hardware, newest products, but making it in a way that consumers appreciate.
It's kind of funny, because people always think Apple is innovation, but
I agree it is not. But having said that, it's still a more closed approach, and Apple decides what is the innovation we want to give to people. Do you see? It's just like thinking, but do you see? This way will lead in the end to better innovation and more sustainable innovation, because if you take this thought and like put it way down the road and like make it max and really critical, having said one company deciding over an entire industry, being the leader in the industry and deciding what is innovation, would that actually make innovation more sustainable, better, faster? Because we wouldn't have the problem of having different standards. Say we use our phone to check in at the airport and check in and to pay, assuming we only have one standard because there's only one company dominating it. Do you think it would help innovation to become more consumer friendly and faster to the market?
So consumer friendly and faster to the market, yes. What you miss in such a system most likely is the things that are completely outside the box and they're completely different. Which is not a problem for a company like Apple, because if they see that another company managed to do that, they are large enough, they have enough funds that they can potentially buy that company, bring it into their fold and work with that. So you do need companies who come up with breakthrough things for us as a society. On a company basis, on the other hand, for you working just on the breakthrough things, that's probably not the most efficient way to deal with.
For an enduring company, would you agree that bringing in technology is more efficient than making it themselves? Because Google obviously encourages their own employees to come up with innovation by their 2080 or 80 something model, whereas Apple says like if there's a really good innovation going on, we just buy it in. And it's a fundamental different approach in my opinion. So what is your view on that?
Well, if you don't mind me jumping in a little bit. I think there is one thing which needs to be pointed out, that although Google invests a lot in innovation and brings out a lot of new products, they also close a lot of new products which don't catch on. I think from what I've read last week or so, that the majority of Google revenue still comes from the search, and a marginal part comes from YouTube and Google Docs. So all the innovation that Google comes up with doesn't necessarily grow into like a sustainable business in the future. So I think there might be a contrast as well, that I actually think that all the innovation might not always be a good idea for a company.
Okay, I agree on that, but having said this, like for example, I think you point out for enduring success you need to be really thoughtful with the way you invest your money. And Apple is really, I think, thoughtful. They really deliberately choose companies they acquire, whereas Google is really well known for just acquiring any good idea that is out in the market.
Yeah, but you need to keep that in proportion. Yeah, they do that, but they never do that to a level that it's huge amounts of money for them. Yeah, it might be looking like it's a lot of money, but in relation to what Google is worth overall, it's not. They're not betting the entire company by doing that. There's lots of research on that question, you know, to get that balance right between doing radically new things, doing things more along the line that you have done already. And I think most researchers agree that you need a bit of both. And then how to get the balance right depends a little bit on the particular circumstances, which markets you target, which countries you are active in, what type of company you are, so what are the resources you come with. I would say that in Google and Apple's case, both of them are right, because they have different strengths, and it wouldn't make sense for Apple to try to do exactly what Google is doing, but it wouldn't make sense either for Google to try to do what Apple does, because they're good in what they do. They both do a bit of both. They just have the balance. Apple slightly more on the exploitation side, I guess, and Google slightly more on the exploration side, but not to an extent that I would say they forget about the other aspect altogether, which would be troublesome. So if they go that far, that would be troublesome. But as they do it, I think both of them have a recipe for long-term success.
So if you were, based on your expertise and your experience, if you were to judge which of the companies might be able to sustain for a longer term, which one would you pick? And
I think they're going to both sustain. That's I think both of them are going to be around for a long time. They got sort of all these basics points that we found more or less right. They have this balance between exploitation with being strong on the exploitation side, both of them. They do diversify into other products. Google slightly less, Google slightly more than Apple, but also Apple. Yeah, they started off with computers. They moved into the iPod, then the iPhone, then the iPad. So they also extend their product lines. They're both fairly conservative when it comes to their finances, which I think is the right way to go. They both had troubles in the past, and they were prepared to learn from them. So I think they are pretty much sorted. One aspect which I simply can't judge as an outsider is how they handle change. That's also an important part of my research, but I don't know the insights of either Apple or Google enough that I'm able to make judgments about it. What I read, yes, my impression is that particularly Google is doing that well, and that Apple is in a difficult transition period with having a new CEO after Steve Jobs dominated the company for such a long
So are you talking about change in terms of the internal structure, or are you talking
structures, cultures, how you handle things? Companies eventually will have to change, because the world around them changes. And then the question is, how do you handle that? We found that the best way to handle that is by not trying to change everything overnight, but take into account where you come from. You know, you have traditions, your ways you behaved in the past, and your people will be used to that. You can't throw that out overnight, so you need to take that into account as you change around. And to judge how a good company is in doing that, you need to spend some time inside, understand really how things are going on in these companies, and for neither Google or Apple do I have enough of an insider view that I would be comfortable to make a judgment on that.
Well, regarding change, actually, one thing that will interest me is because usually the companies which you have research on that are slowly changing and are able to enjoy success for long term are not always the market leaders. Is that right? Because both Apple and Google are at the moment are market leaders, and they have been able to capture the market, being one of the first that created and captured the market.
You know, companies will eventually not always be market leaders. It's virtually impossible for 100 years or so. In my research, I think the longest period where one of the comparison companies was doing better than the top company was 5 years, but usually it was maybe a couple of years or so. And we have seen also Apple being not the top company in its industry for a while, and then at the moment they are. So at one point both Google or Apple will probably struggle against one of their competitors, which doesn't mean that they can't come back and take the top spot later on again. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe to wrap it up, which of the three which of the three companies do you see ahead in becoming an enduring company?
So, you know, as I said, I have doubts about Facebook as it stands. I think both Apple and Google are going to do well. If I would need to put my money somewhere, I would put it in Google.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for your contribution today, and thank you, Michael, as well, for being here.
Yes, I hope we can see you again. Maybe.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we have to say that it was a very good discussion, I think, and I think we both learned a lot from your expertise as well, and hopefully our viewers will as well.